Hello, welcome to day 366. Today I'm going to start by sharing with you from the last chapter of NTI First Thessalonians and the first chapter of NTI Second Thessalonians, both of which you've already read. So starting with NTI First Thessalonians chapter 5. Let me talk to you about your fear. For fear may be the greatest hindrance to love. Fear, when given power by you, seems to have the power to keep you from me, which is to keep you forgetful of the law of love. So fear is the greatest defense mechanism of the ego. Fear, as I'm sure you know, is an extremely uncomfortable feeling. And most humans will do anything to avoid fear if they can. And this is why it's the great defense mechanism for the ego. Because as we get closer and closer to letting go of ego, or further and further into the process of letting go of ego, this fear comes up. And typically what people do when they feel that fear is they turn around. They revert back to their ego conditioning, and they don't continue the process of letting go of ego. It's important to know that fear is the ego's greatest defense mechanism. And one of the things you can expect to feel on this path of letting go of ego is fear. NTI First Thessalonians says, when you choose fear as a belief that you listen to, you choose to believe that you are separate, which means you choose to deny all that is. If it is your choice to deny all that is and the law of love, you will live within the truth, but you will not see it because you have decided to look away. Again, fear is a defense mechanism of the ego. And the ego is really that belief that I am an individual, personal self, separate from everything else. So if I fall for fear, if I turn back from letting go of the ego because this very uncomfortable feeling arises along with stories in the mind about what's going to happen if I keep going forward with letting go of the ego. If I fall for fear, I stay in the belief that I'm an individual person, separate from everything. That's the primary purpose of fear. Now, what's really interesting is that what humans believe and the story that fear tells is that actually fear protects us. In fact, most humans believe that without fear, they would not be safe, that they actually need fear. That's an illusion. And as we go further in NTI, especially when we get into NTI 2 Timothy, we're going to look at this closely. But that's an illusion. What fear actually protects is the ego, the sense of I as a separate, individual, personal self. So you could say it's true that fear is protecting something, but it's protecting this false idea about what I am. And it's keeping me from realizing the truth that I am. Fear is a mirage that keeps you focused on mirages. In fear, you firmly hide your head from truth. But hiding from truth within a pool of mirages does not change the truth. The truth is what it is. And eventually, if this hasn't happened for you yet, eventually what happens is the calling to realize truth becomes very strong. And in fact, the calling really says in its own way, I need to know truth because it's the truth. That's the desire to know truth for its own sake. It's not that I want to get anything from it. It's just that it's the truth. And I want to know the truth, right? I want to know what's true. I'm tired of living in some kind of a fantasy, some kind of illusion, some kind of a disillusion. So hiding from truth within a pool of mirages does not change the truth. The truth is what it is. Look at the peacefulness all around where you stand. And this is learning to look at what we truly are, at consciousness and at awareness. Because again, whatever is happening, even if the mind is going crazy, crazy, crazy with fear thoughts, that's happening within this peacefulness that we are. So one of the things we're going to start really learning to do now is we're not going to deny fear. That's not helpful. We're not going to repress fear. That's not helpful. But we're going to learn to shift our attention so that even while fear is happening, we're noticing the peacefulness that it's happening in, the spaciousness, the openness, the awareness that it's happening in. We're going to start learning to focus on our true self, even as the egoic illusion continues. Look at the peacefulness all around where you stand and know you are forever safe within the peaceful memory of your true self. Be gentle with yourself on the path of remembering, and be gentle with those who reflect your thoughts to you. Gentle in this case would be lack of judgment, right? So there are times when you're going to feel like you're really watching your mind well, you're letting go of egoic thoughts well, you're practicing the superconductor process well. And then there are going to be times you're going to feel like you're not doing it well. Whether the mind is judging you as doing it well, or whether the mind is judging you as not doing it well, you don't want to take those minds seriously or as fact. It's judgment that you want to stand back from. In judgment, we are not gentle with ourselves. We're gentle with ourselves in just letting it all be, trusting it's all perfect, paying attention to the spaciousness that it's all happening in, trusting the healing process. And it also, of course, says, be gentle with those who reflect your thoughts back to you. This means the other people in the world that we interact with, even if we just see them on television, the news, for example, the other people that we interact with are acting out the thoughts that are being sent out into the world to paint the world, and that includes, of course, some right-minded thoughts, but it includes mostly egoic thoughts. So they are acting these thoughts out. And we just want to see that as that. They're acting out the egoic thoughts that are believed. They're acting out the egoic thoughts that all humans are giving attention to. Forgive them, Father. They know not what they do. This is how we be gentle with those who reflect our thoughts back to us. We just watch, again, without judgment. So learning to watch ourselves without judgment, learning to watch everyone else without judgment, is being gentle. Be gentle with yourself on this path of remembering, and be gentle with those who reflect your thoughts to you. Remember the purpose of peace and the purpose of lack of peace. Peace is the path of remembering. Peace is the way to peace. And a peace, again, is paying attention to that part of us that is always here, right? That part of us that's aware, open, spacious. Peace is the path of remembering. Lack of peace is evidence that you have momentarily strayed from your path, which means we're not paying attention to our true self. We've gone back into paying attention to the mind, its stories, its involvement. And so when that happens, we just want to gently shift back to paying attention to awareness, openness, spaciousness, the peace that's always here, the true self. Do not accept temptation to deny interruptions to your peace. Right? There is this temptation because there's this belief that we're bad if we get caught up in the mind. And so, deny that I had that thought and believed it, right? Do not accept temptation to deny the interruptions to peace. Pick them up and look at them in joy. For you have recognized that which you were tempted to deny. Healing is a process where we have to look at a lot of things, a lot of darkness in ourselves, a lot of darkness in the world, a lot of darkness in consciousness. But looking at it with awareness, remember Leo's video, awareness alone is curative. Looking at it with awareness is what heals it. And so when we have the opportunity to look at something, have the opportunity to look at this strong judgmental thought that came up in the mind, this is something to celebrate. Because it's through the looking that our conditioning is healed. It's through the looking that our egoic point of view is healed. So we want to accept the opportunities to look at even the darkest thoughts with joy, because this is the process of healing. Do not accept temptation to deny the interruptions to peace. Pick them up and look at them in joy. For you have recognized that which you were tempted to deny. Do not deny the thought that has occurred, and do not accept it. By accept it in this case, it means believe it. Don't deny it, don't repress it, but don't believe it either. We're going for that middle way, which is looking at it and letting it go, the superconductor process. Looking at it, acknowledging it, and letting it go without believing it. Do not deny the thought that has occurred, and do not accept it. Set it aside because it is not true, and continue joyously on the path of peace. So 2 things that we've really seen here in NTI, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. One thing that we've seen is that fear is the greatest defense mechanism of the ego. And so if we want to transcend the ego and know our true self, we have to learn to be okay with fear. I remember it felt like I made a great step forward when I no longer feared fear, when I could allow fear to be as I practiced rest, accept, and trust, which of course is similar to the superconductor process. The second point, again, is we're going to be looking at what's going on with us. This is something that we began to practice in NTI Philippians when we watched the body, and again in NTI Colossians when again we watched the body. This is called mindfulness in most circles. And this coming weekend, you're going to watch a 15-minute video from Leo on mindfulness. Now, it's a very, very short video. So you might want to watch it 2 or 3 times. In fact, I highly recommend watching it on 2 or 3 times. Typically, I give you the assignment at a time when you have really 3 possible days to get to that special weekend assignment. Well, maybe each of those 3 possible days, you could watch this 15-minute video and really pay attention to what mindfulness is, because the only way that we're going to be able to complete what we need to complete in these 500 days, which is the looking, the only way we're going to be able to complete what we have to complete is to learn to be mindful as much as possible, ideally, eventually, all of the time. So pay close attention to that mindfulness video. Let me introduce you to someone. I'm going to turn my computer around. There she is. This is my dog, Ellie. She's taking a nap because it's very early in the morning here again. We're doing this before the sun has come up. So that's Ellie. The reason I wanted to introduce you to Ellie. Oh, there she is. Now she's paying attention. Hello, Ellie. Can you say hi to everyone? Hi, BB. Okay, you can go back. She's like, say hi to who? Okay, go back to sleep. I love you. The reason I wanted to introduce you to Ellie is because, Ellie is very smart. Dogs are very smart. Dolphins are very smart. Pigs are very smart. There's lots of animals that are very smart. But there's a difference between these animals, these mammals, and us. The primary difference, most important difference between these very intelligent mammals and us is that they are not self-aware. And we can be. We have that capability in our brains. What do I mean by self-aware? Self-aware is the ability to pay attention to yourself, reflect on yourself, inquire into yourself, and ultimately realize the true self. Ellie, for example, is afraid of thunder and fireworks. Whenever there's thunder or fireworks, she just starts shaking, and I take her down into the basement where the noise isn't as loud and she gets comfortable again when she can't hear it. But she doesn't have the ability to reflect on that fear. She doesn't have the ability to be self-aware. She doesn't have the ability to inquire into that fear and ask, is this fear reasonable? Could I notice that I am unaffected by the sound of thunder or the sound of fireworks? Humans do have that ability. This is why humans have the ability to awaken to consciousness as what all things are, because we have the ability to be self-aware. And mindfulness is exercising that ability to be self-aware instead of being unconscious robots to the egoic thoughts that we are receiving through the law of love. So mindfulness, or the ability to be self-aware, is a very important skill for humans. It's the path of awakening. And when you watch this video with Leo this weekend on mindfulness, he's going to ask you to do this little exercise. And I want you to do the exercise, but I want you to do something a little different. Leo is going to ask you to pause the video for 60 seconds and try to just think about yourself. So for example, if I was doing it the way Leo instructs us, I would just think, I am Regina. That is who I am. I was born in Coffeyville, Kansas. My parents are Don and Anita, right? Just think about yourself. But that's the person self. I want you to do something else for 60 seconds. I want you to do that exercise, but I want you to do something else for 60 seconds. I want you to focus on, to the degree that you can, focus on the true self. Focus on awareness. Focus on openness. Notice all of my perceptions are contained within me. Focus on spaciousness. Focus on peace. Focus on stillness for 60 seconds. Focus on the qualities of the true self. The meditation that's coming this weekend is an introduction to the loving consciousness form of meditation. And then starting at the very end of this week, this coming week, we're going to begin practicing loving consciousness meditation. That's meditating, focusing on this consciousness that you'll practice for 60 seconds with Leo. When you do the meditation gives some instructions when you start the loving consciousness meditation, not the introduction. The introduction is a guided meditation. But at the end of the week, when you start the first loving consciousness meditation, it will be an audio. It gives some instructions, and then it repeats those instructions every 10 minutes. You're allowed to meditate, of course, for as long as you want. So if you want to meditate for only 10 minutes, then the first time you hear the instructions repeated, you would stop. If you want to meditate for 20 minutes, which you'll find is Leo's recommendation, then the second time you hear the instructions repeated, you would stop. If you want to meditate for 30 minutes and the third time you hear the instructions repeated, you would stop. And if you want to meditate longer, you just continue. The audio will just quietly end and you just continue for as long as you want. But we're going to be focusing with love, with gratitude, with appreciation on awareness. I said I would also read NTI 2 Thessalonians chapter 1. So let me do that. NTI 2 Thessalonians chapter 1 says, "You can never fall short of my love because I know who you are and I praise all that you do." In other words, the right mind of consciousness sees us as consciousness. It doesn't see us as people who are doing good things or bad things. It knows the law of love. It knows that everything that is happening in this world is created through our attention on what is happening in this world. It sees it all as just this creation. You know, whatever we give attention to, Nisargadatta Maharaj said, attention is love. Whatever we give our attention to, we learned this in NTI Ephesians, whatever we give our attention to is in some way becoming manifest in the world, and it's coming back to us. And the right mind of consciousness knows that's what's going on here, and also knows that as that's going on here, what we truly are is the unaffected consciousness. So it celebrates our freedom to give attention to whatever we want to give attention to experience whatever we want to experience. And it celebrates our truth. So its eyes are constantly on what we really are, the unaffected openness, spaciousness, intelligence, awareness. Its eyes are constantly on that. You can never fall short of my love because I know who you are and I praise all that you do. I am your heart because I am you. And what that meant to me as the scribe is that, you know, when I was writing NTI and writing this teaching, I could feel that that was my heart, not this person that maybe later in the day got annoyed at my daughter or something. You know, that was still happening then, but that wasn't my heart. I could feel that this was my heart. And so this is saying, I am your heart because I'm you. That person who's getting annoyed at your daughter, that's not who you are. That's a manifestation of attention. I am your truth. I am your heart because I am you. And then NTI 2 Thessalonians chapter 1 says, I will teach you to see the world that you see differently by teaching you to see yourself through new eyes. And this is the key. We see the world through the filter of our mind. And what our mind is saying is that I am a personal, individual self with my own self-will. Things that my self-will agrees with are good things. things that my self-will disagrees with are bad things. I can judge the whole world based on who I think I am and based on the conditioning in my mind, right? But the right mind of consciousness doesn't see the world that way. The right mind of consciousness sees everything as perfect, everything as unaffected consciousness, everything as openness, spaciousness, unaffectedness, intelligence, eternal, love. The way we see is based on who we think we are. When we see ourselves as consciousness, we see everything as consciousness. When we see ourselves as an individual and separate person, we see the entire world as individual and separate. The secret to awakening is to awaken to you with a capital Y, your true self. The secret to awakening is to awaken to you. It is to accept the blaze within, right? That true desire fire. It is to accept the blaze within as you. And then NTI 2 Thessalonians says, look now at the unworthiness in your mind. And in fact, let me look a little bit at NTI 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, which you have not read yet. Look now deep within your mind and heart. We are looking for a false God that you have erected before your truth. This is a false image made of yourself through your own judgment that you could be that which is other than that which you are. We must raise this false being up from its hiding place, because it is from within hiding that it rules. Brought to the light of day, or brought to awareness or consciousness, right? Self-awareness. Brought into the light of day, it cannot rule longer because its falseness must be revealed. So most humans on the planet Earth live with the belief, either somewhat conscious or completely repressed and unconscious, that they are lacking, inherently lacking, not good enough, unworthy, shameful, a fake. These are the different ways that it manifests. And a lot of their decisions, without them knowing it, come from this belief. And so what NTI 2 Thessalonians is about is bringing this false belief, this false God it calls, out into awareness so we can set ourselves free. If fear is the number one defense of the ego, unworthiness is the second. Or maybe it's not a defense so much as just a primary belief in the mind that's based on our constant judgment of ourself. Be willing to rest in the confidence of your faith, which means your trust that you are beyond this, that you are that which is beyond the person, beyond your own self-judgments. Be willing to rest in the confidence of your faith as you call the demon within to meet your gaze, as you call the darkest ideas you have about yourself into awareness, to be looked at with the light of awareness. You can smile in confidence at your own invitation, asking this darkness to rise up, knowing that as you stand firm in the knowledge of who you are, the openness, the spaciousness, the peacefulness that this is within, that you shall, let me start the sentence over, starting in the middle isn't working. You can smile in confidence at your own invitation, knowing that as you stand firm in the knowledge of who you are, that which you shall see cannot shake you, for it is nothing more than your own judgment of yourself, made solely by you. It is a judgment that that can be completely taken away through your own delight and decision to do so. So what we don't realize is that this sense that I am not good enough, that I am inherently lacking, that I am a fake, that I am shameful, however it shows up. What we don't realize is that this sense of self, of unworthy self, comes from the judgments our mind makes throughout the day, every day, about us that we don't even see, but we instantly believe. So yesterday, you started making a list of these judgments. And typically on our weekly review day, you don't have a new assignment. You just, review whatever assignment you want to review from the previous week. But today you do have an assignment, and that is to continue. When you notice the mind making judgments about you, write it down. We're just creating a list. You started the list yesterday. You'll continue the list today, and you will continue the list tomorrow. That will be tomorrow's assignment too. And then the next day, you're going to be asked to work with that list. So make sure you're paying attention. Be self-aware. Be mindful. What is the mind saying about me? Is it saying I'm ugly? I'm fat? I'm stupid? My house is not clean enough? I'm too mean? I'm too controlling? What is it saying about you? And write them down. And don't forget the positive judgments that have a flip side. For example, some days you might look in the mirror and think, wow, I look good today. But is that always true, or does it have a flip side? Is that positive judgment just one side of a coin, which often comes up very negative? What about you do something at work? Oh, I'm so smart. I figured that out. But does it have a flip side? Are there days when that's not true? Right? So watch the mind for these judgments of the self and just keep a list. And as you go through NTI 2 Thessalonians this week, it's going to talk about how to let go of these judgments. Therefore, how to let go of this false image of yourself as shameful, not good enough, fake, etc. So we're being mindful. We're looking at the beliefs and the defense mechanisms that keep us caught up in the ego as who we think we are, so that we can look at them with awareness, be the superconductor with them, set these beliefs and defense mechanisms free, awaken to ourselves as consciousness. And at the same time, we're beginning the loving consciousness meditation towards the end of the week, which is really going to be focusing on consciousness as what we are. So as we head into this last, it's a little less than 150 days, we're really involved in some super practices. Let me just show you one more thing, and then I'll let you go. I'm going to share my screen. This is based on the work of Dr. David Hawkins. This is his map of consciousness. And you'll notice that the highest level is called enlightenment, level 700 to 1000. He puts numbers on them. The lowest levels, shame, guilt, apathy, right? These levels are what we could call unworthiness that we're looking at in NTI 2 Thessalonians. Grief is a strong belief in me, and I need things to be a certain way in order to be happy. And if those things aren't the way that I need them to be, I suffer. Strong belief in individuality there. And then fear, desire, anger, pride. These are defense mechanisms that keep the ego in place, that hide these lower beliefs from our sight so that they aren't healed. Courage is the level where we begin practicing mindfulness, practicing the superconductor process, willingly looking at the darkness, bringing it into awareness. So NTI is written for the level of courage. the looking. And as we pass through courage, we get into these higher and higher levels where the peacefulness of what we are, the happiness of what we are, that naturalness of what we are becomes much more conscious. These are very pleasant. They're not yet awake, but they're very pleasant ways of continuing the spiritual path. Courage is the crossover point. We're crossing over from acting from fear, acting from unworthiness, defending those beliefs, into looking at them and becoming free of them. So mindfulness is the way of courage. NTI was written for the path of courage. And courage is the way to cross over from the lower to the higher ways of experiencing ourselves. So again, that video this weekend, mindfulness, maybe consider watching it 3 times. Also, the loving consciousness meditation, as we're introduced to that, which is focusing on our true self, give that great attention. This week, you'll read the rest of NTI 2 Thessalonians, and you'll start NTI 1 Timothy, which is looking at the belief in personhood, or the belief that I am an individual, separate person. And I'll be back next week. Have a good week. Bye.